No, it's Andrew.
Okay, great. So let me just get my screen share up here. Okay, just let me know that you can see my screen, guys.
Yeah, all good.
All right, perfect. George, Andrew, ready?
Yep. Okay.
Super, let's go for it. Well, welcome everyone. This is Friday, and this only means one thing: it's Qlik Virtual Meetup Scotland. Episode 11 we have reached. We always seem to be surprised that we managed to get to another episode, but it just keeps on rolling. You can count lockdown by how many episodes we've had of QVMS. So we're at episode 11 now. You can probably tell that I spend about the breadth of about 6 seconds thinking up these subtitles, but this episode is with great analytics power comes great social responsibility. So great analytics power fits one of our presenters really well, and certainly the great social responsibility fits the other presenter really well. So why not just mash that together and see how we go? So you've got George, you've got me, and you've got Andrew, and we're happy to guide you through. And we popped the episode 12 registration in the chat already, so we're all set for that. But we'll pop that in a few more times as we go along as well. So thank you everyone for coming on a Friday. So our agenda today, we pride ourselves with the level of speakers that we bring, but we think we've even outdone ourselves this time. We've managed to get to what we think are incredible speakers. First of all, we've got Kate Strachnyi. Sorry, Kate, you need to help me get your pronunciation right. What I was going to do was go on LinkedIn and click the little button, but I didn't do it. So you need to help me so I get it right every time.
I was smiling to myself because you said it right. So thank you.
The first time, Strachnyi.
Yes.
Okay, I'll try as I go. But Kate, well, Kate knows a lot of things about a lot of things, and she's spearheading Story by Data, Datacated, and lots of other great stuff which she's going to talk to us about. So we're really pleased to have Kate with us. We've also got Julie Kay from Qlik, a very well known inside and outside of Qlik for her corporate social responsibility hat that she wears all day, every day for quite a long time now, Julie. So, and we've also we've got COP26 coming to Glasgow at some point in the future as well, which we're all very excited about, that we might be able to meet Julie and lots of other Qlik people in person as well. So hopefully we get through this COVID era and we can make that all happen too. So I hope you'll agree, two great people to have on our show to start with. Great stuff. But the show wouldn't be the show without my esteemed colleagues here. We always like to take a minute to acknowledge them. I'm Brian Bouden. I've been a Qlik luminary for the last 5 years, and I'm the managing director at DataGlow IT. But big parts of the team, George Beaton and Andrew McIlwright. So I'll throw it over to George to say hello for a few minutes. George, hi.
Hi, and thanks, Brian. Julie and Kate, this is the first time that we're meeting. I'm really pleased to have you on today. I'm actually just half an hour ago, I sent out an email to some of my colleagues at FTI, just reminding them that you were on today. So I'm expecting to see a few of them. I got a fantastic response by email from them. So that's, I think that speaks volumes. Yeah, so from sunny Scotland, welcome, and I'm really looking forward to this session. Over to you, Andrew.
Thanks, George. Hi, Kate. Hi, Julie. Obviously, I've had the pleasure of working with both of you in the first Qlik Data Unplugged event of the year, which was with the awesome cause of Mercy Ships, and that went down really well, got a lot of social media attention. Obviously, it's a great charity, great corporate program that Qlik are 100% behind as a CSR charity customer, and Julie can talk more about Mercy Ships if she's going to. There's big news in Mercy Ships. For those of you that don't know, Mercy Ships operate a hospital ship off the coast of Africa and visit very underprivileged countries, delivering free medical care and dental care actually to some very poor people with some unusual medical conditions. It's a great cause, but please have a look at Mercy Ships on their website and online. And they've got an amazing announcement coming up in October. I don't want to steal people's thunder, but there's a big event that is happening in October, and people should have a wee look at Mercy Ships and watch out for the news that's coming out. It's going to be an even bigger story from October onwards. So dangle the carrot. Back to Brian.
Yeah, we don't like to think of it as you stealing the thunder, Andrew. Just teasing it, I think, is the best way to put it, isn't it? So we know it's coming, so that'll be something cool to look forward to. Guys, as always, it's a huge team effort to put these things together. It seems like a simple thing to grab two presenters and get a deck together, but it's a lot more complex than it seems. So thank you again for your continued support, and a pleasure to co-host these events with you as always. So we're now on to episode 11. A couple of weeks ago, we had episode 10, and we were very, very pleased to have two more great guests. We had Mike Tarallo, returning friend of the show, for appearance number 3. And this time he ran us down business logic, which is basically helping the insight advisor to become even more intelligent than it already is in Qlik Sense. So that was some really cool stuff that Mike showed us, and obviously a bit of a retro game tint to his demos as well, which we love too. Perfectly matched to Mike was George Firrican, our resident data governance expert, who came to talk to us about dark data, which thrilled me because he talked about things like Stranger Things and Hopper, which ticks all my boxes when you want to talk about dark data. But it was fascinating to hear about the way that dark data is being approached by different organisations and how much of it there really is out there. So if you weren't here for the show, or you want to watch the recording again, we popped it in the chat at the beginning, but tiny.cc QVMS EP10 rec. That sounds like a mouthful. It's easier to just click on it. Feel free to catch up with the show as we go. We love it when you catch up on our episodes as well. I believe they're starting to be streamed to YouTube as well now, George, sort of posthumously as we catch up with things.
And that's correct. So the last 2 are on YouTube now. They're all on our website at qlikmeetupscotland.co.uk. But just for performance reasons, and also just to get them out there into the web ecosystem, we're moving them out onto our own YouTube channel as well.
Okay, great. Thanks for that, George. Great stuff. And we wouldn't be able to run our episodes without these guys. You probably all know that Andrew and George and I are members of the Luminary and the Meetup programs, but we'd like to just give a few minutes to, I think Carolyn Davis is on the call, who runs kind of the Meetup and Luminary programs on a day-to-day basis. So Carolyn, do you want to just say a few words about those programs, because we couldn't do it without you? Many thanks as always.
Yeah, of course, no problem. Thank you. Yeah, so for those of you who aren't familiar, this is my team here. I work with Jillian and Shelley, and I specifically run the Qlik Meetup program and the Qlik Luminary program. So both are hugely important to the Qlik ecosystem, but specifically the Qlik Luminary program, I'll just go into a little bit about what that is. It consists of our top Qlik advocates, brings together the best and brightest customers, partners, and even like Qlik independent users and Qlik enthusiasts. So our Qlik luminaries, they provide really valuable feedback and insights, and we work together to make Qlik the best that it can be. So it's a really valuable program to be a part of, and it's really cool to see it grow. And then we also have the Qlik Meetup program, which, are smaller user groups, which, they're supposed to be really fun, and they're for Qlik users, by Qlik users, and it just helps provide a space to get together to talk about, all things Qlik related. So it's really cool to see these two programs in action, right now with the Scotland Meetup. So thanks, guys. And, it's been fun, like 6 months doing these, helping you guys out.
Sorry, rookie error, I was muted. Yeah, just thank you, Carolyn. That was, it's great to have you here as always, and like 6 months, wow, that's crazy when you think about it that way, but hopefully we can keep going for a bit yet. So thanks again to the Meetup and the Luminary programs.
No problem.
So kind of leading into that, I just want to really lead into our first guest, who is Kate Strachnyi of Story by Data and Datacated and lots of other things. A top voice in data science and analytics on LinkedIn. And if you're on LinkedIn and you follow data, you'll know who Kate is. You don't need me to introduce her. So I'm going to do one better, and I'm going to throw it over to Kate. Kate, it's great to have you here, and thank you for coming on to our episode. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel like I'm in Scotland now. This is awesome. Sunny Scotland, right? It's actually not as sunny. I mean, dialing in here from New York. So hello, everybody. Thank you for having me on the show. I won't share my slides just yet. I'll provide a brief intro to myself. As you alluded to, I live on LinkedIn, and that's truly my second home. I do appreciate all sorts of social media, but I've decided LinkedIn is going to be my home. And today I'm going to talk about data visualization. So one of my big passions outside of social media is data visualization and making sure we get data visualization right. So for the brief bio, I'll provide, I started my career in selling risk management training, actually ended up working at a bank doing risk management, and then shifted to consulting and regulatory compliance for banks, and ultimately ended up in the world of data. It was almost exactly 6 years ago when I decided to make the switch, a full career shift. So for those listening who want to get into data, you can make it happen even if you're not remotely working in that space. So today I will talk about visual best practices, and I do have a couple of slides that I'd like to share. So I'll go ahead and pull those up right now. And maybe as I'm pulling that up, I'll let you guys know if you haven't heard already, and if you're not following me on LinkedIn, I'm hosting my very own Datacated conference, which is this online virtual event, which, if you guys have questions on that, I'm happy to discuss this towards the end. So I've got the slide here. Can you guys let me know if you can see this well? Yes, okay, cool. All right, so data visualization, right? I always like to start out by telling people data visualization needs to be these three things. It has to be informative, appealing, and efficient. And you can think, when you think of data visualization, you're probably thinking, okay, any chart or graph or some sort of visual representation of data. And you're right, almost everything that, every way you can represent data visually is a data visualization. But in order to make it effective, I think it has to be informative. So it has to actually tell a story, right? What is the data story you're trying to convey? It has to be appealing. Why? Because it will actually hold attention from your audience, and people like looking at things that are appealing. It's just human nature. And efficient. So your data visualization has to tell that data story as efficiently as possible. So if there's a really clear way to visualize something, or a really easy way, I always recommend you go with that. There are also complicated and complex charts that you can build, and I typically advise against that, because while those could be really useful for maybe grabbing attention, they're not as useful mostly for explaining the data story. So I'll also walk through briefly the data visualization process, basically in my opinion, right? I think people have different ways of going about visualizing data. But I typically tell people, it all starts with the context, right? Who's your audience? Who are you trying to show this data visualization or dashboard to? And what are the questions that they want answered? Or what are the questions of the data that you want to ask? So it starts with that context. Then we go into the actual data. So we've got to obtain the data and identify necessary data fields. So for example, if our question was, how are sales doing for the past 3 months? The data you might need is the amount of sales, and then you'll have a date field. So obtaining the data and getting the necessary data fields. Step 3 is method. So here is basically determining the most effective way to represent the information. Simply put, this is selecting the best chart or graph, if you need a chart or graph, to actually visualize that data and answer the question. In our example that I was talking about, sales over the past few quarters, we could probably use a line graph or an area chart to visualize that data, because we're looking at time series data or data over time. And then you visualize. So this is probably my favorite part, because I use tools like Qlik, Tableau, Power BI, Excel, R, Python. I probably have used all of the popular tools to visualize data. And it's one of my hobbies to actually try to use as many different tools to visualize the same data as possible. But this is where you visualize. You put your visuals on either on paper or on your computer. And the part I'll focus on here in this presentation is the visualize part of things, because it takes practice, and there's special visual best practices that you can apply to data visualization that could take your visuals from looking okay or looking good to actually looking great, right? To being that informative, appealing, and efficient. And it's all about using the right fonts, colors, labels, formats, reducing clutter, and I'll focus a bit on that soon. The last step, almost the last step, is communicating, right? So communicate with the stakeholders to incorporate feedback. This is basically where you say, look, Mrs. or Mr. Executive, this is what I've made. Here's the data visualization. This is what you asked for, or this is what I think you need to help make your data-driven or data-informed decisions. And at that point, you will get feedback, right? So I've added a little thing that says this is an iterative process, because you're going to continuously come back to your visualization and maybe tweak it or add different filters or add different drill downs and views depending on what your stakeholders are asking. Now, if you remember, step 3 was method, so selecting the right chart, right? And this is what I call the dedicated chart selector guide. This is a view into probably most of the popular charts and graphs that you'll come across in the data visualization space. So I kind of broke it into a few sections. We've got specific values, comparison, relationship, composition, distribution, and geographic. And the point here is this is meant to be used as a starter guide, or basically to get a sense of what chart or graph should I use for visualizing this data. And not only do you have little images where you can get a sense of what is a tree map. If you've never seen a tree map, it gives you an idea what that looks like. But it also has some text on the right that tells you this shows a hierarchical part to whole relationship, right? It tells you what you can use these charts for. For example, a slope graph compares a data point typically between 2 points in time. So if you have a data question that asks, how have sales changed from point A to point B, you could consider using a slope graph. Now, each of these charts also have best practices within themselves. For example, the slope graph, you want to make sure you're not, you don't have 20 different slopes and they're not all rainbow colored, because that can get really confusing for your audience. But that's part of this chart selector guide. And I'm not going to spend time going through all of these. If this is a data audience, you guys are probably familiar with most of these charts, but it's always helpful to have a one-pager kind of to start brainstorming what you think would be a good way to represent your data. Now, visual best practices. So I put together this quick checklist, and all of this content I actually teach in my dedicated academy, which you'll see here on the top left, where this is part of the visual best practices course, which is product agnostic and goes basically a deep dive into all of these visual best practices that you're seeing here. But I felt like this would be good to share with the audience today in case you needed a one-pager. If you're visualizing data for school, for work, for fun, like me. If you're anything like me, you visualize data for fun. This is a quick checklist that takes you through some of those best practices, right? We go ahead and start with the general checklist. So making sure the chart type is appropriate and the objects are working together. They basically focus on one key takeaway message or focusing on one story. And oops. I just wanted to see there were questions coming in, and I wanted to let you guys know if you do have comments or questions, I'm happy to answer them as I'm presenting. I'm kind of used to doing things that way, and I see that there's a comment here about Adrian said you gotta love a Venn. Yes, thank you. You should love a Venn diagram. So I'll keep the chat open if you have comments or questions throughout the session. Moving on to layout, right? So the number of charts in the view is limited to 4. Now, I think this is a good time to mention that these are best practices, they're guidelines. These are not black and white rules that you must adhere to. Sometimes you'll have 5 charts, sometimes you'll have 10, and in some cases it might make sense. So 4 is kind of like a rule of thumb, because if you have 10 different charts in your dashboard, then it might start to get confusing and your audience will start to get lost in what exactly they're looking at. Proper use of real estate, so making sure that, you know, those things that matter most take up the most space, and then things are placed in, you know, logical order, making sure that the sizing is appropriate. And I'm going to have an example towards the end of the talk today where you'll see yourself how these visual best practices can really make a difference to data visualization. Text, so I mean, this is pretty obvious, but you have to be able to read it. If you can't read it, what's the point of putting it on there, right? And this is text size and also the font type. You'll notice that there are some fonts that work better than others for data visualization. Labels, annotations, basically any type of text that you think can help share the story, and also try to limit the amount of text on the visual, because if you can use a chart or graph to help tell that story, then that's the whole point of, you know, data visualization. Otherwise, you could just write a paragraph and email that out to people, which in some cases might be a good thing to do. So definitely, you know, make a decision early on if you even need a data visualization. I feel like sometimes people visualize things just because they can. Sometimes a sentence or just one number could be the answer to your visualization questions, but I'll move on here. So format, I could probably spend a day talking about format in different business intelligence software and tools, because there's so many little nuances, so many things you can change, so many updates you can make to your visualizations that, again, can make it a lot more effective at telling the data story. But some of the formatting tips I typically share are, you know, grid lines. Unless you truly need grid lines, you can remove them, or if you really must keep them either light gray or some sort of muted color. Borders, you don't really need borders around charts for the most part in a dashboard. So if you don't need them, remove them. Formatting your values to, you know, a specific level of precision. Do you need to round it up, or do you need exact values? Do you need to add currency or some sort of symbols like inches or centimeters? Being very conscious about how you actually visualize that data. Graphs are two-dimensional, so avoiding 3D or bevel shapes. There is a real reason why you shouldn't have 3D, you know, bar charts and 3D pie charts. They can actually be misleading to your audience. I don't have an example of this up here, but if you had a pie chart that is 2D and one that is 3D, you will be able to see the difference, where anything that's in the foreground looks bigger than anything that's in the background, even if it's not bigger. So can definitely confuse your audience there. I know they look cool, or I guess they look cool. Brian says management loves a 3D pie chart. Yes, yes, and Excel tells you this is the great thing to do, an exploding pie chart that's in 3D and 15 different colors. And again, it might look cool, but nobody understands what they're looking at all. Data legends. So data legends are basically like color legends or shape legends that guide your audience to what it is they're looking at. The guide here is just position them next to the relevant charts, right? It might seem straightforward and kind of like common sense, but you'll be surprised at how many data visualizations I've come across where you'll have the color legend on the top right and an actual chart on the bottom left, and you didn't even know that they were related. And I'll show you in the example of the before and after chart that I'm going to demonstrate, where you might not even need color legends at all, because you can incorporate them into text, into a colored text. All right. Color, yes, this brings us to color. So color is one of the key things that I always talk about when we talk about visual best practices, right? So there are three things I always cover. One is reducing clutter, which we just talked about in formatting, selecting the right chart, which we talked about in the dedicated chart selector guide. And the third one is color. Again, I could spend a day talking about color, but I'll just focus on the few points that I've got here. So the main point here is use color to tell a story, right? Be intentional. Don't add color for the sake of adding color. Sometimes you can even start with a grayscale and just have no color at all, and then think about where should I place color to help tell that story. The business intelligence software tools that we're, you know, very, very used to using provide color as kind of like part of the chart. The default settings add color in some cases. And I think that that's great, but I think taking the time to really consider how to be intentional with the use of color is really helpful and can really help tell that data story. So supporting data is muted. Anything that's supporting data, and supporting data is basically like grid lines or axes or tick marks, maybe sometimes annotations. Try to keep those gray so they're not taking over the show. Unless there's something that you really want to grab attention, then go ahead and color that a more vibrant color. Patterns are still viewable when printed in black and white. What this means is your data visualization, your gorgeous, beautiful data visualization that you worked so hard on, could be printed in black and white, right? It might look great on screen, it might look great on your phone, or iPad, whatever, but somebody somewhere might print it in black and white, and you kind of have to think about that and predict what it would look like. And there are a few ways of figuring this out. You can either save this as an image and put it in PowerPoint and Word document and go to grayscale mode. You can actually print it in black and white, which is not great for the environment, but that's one way to do it. And then there are other sites that you can actually upload your image to and see what it will look like in black and white. And this is important because sometimes when you use color to tell a data story, and you print it in black and white, sometimes that data story is diluted because the audience can no longer see the differences in hues. So Andrew said color blindness, color vision deficiency affects 1 in 12 men. Yes, I talk about this in my course, and 1 in 200 women in the world. And that brings me to my next point, right? Color is legible for people with color blindness. There's actually a really cool website, I believe it's, Color Brewer 2, that you can check out, where you can choose color schemes and you can select color blind color schemes, and they'll give you ideas of hex values or RGB values that you can use in your data visualizations that will take color blindness into account. For those not familiar with color blindness, it just means that people who have this, they can see really clearly, but they can't really tell the difference between colors like red and green, which, if you think about, red and green for a long time has been used for something like green is good and red is bad, right? At least in the Western culture. And for those 8% of men who are colorblind, they can't see the difference between the good and the bad. So I think using colors like blue and orange has become a lot more popular as the standard colors for showing good and bad. So, by the way, Malcolm Mitch says black and white is useful to see proper definition. Remember how good black and white photos can be. Yes, absolutely. Adrian's asking about the use of emojis. I think if you think it adds value to your data visualization, if you're looking at maybe Twitter sentiment about a specific topic, I think you can use emojis to show, positive, neutral, and negative sentiment. I think emojis do have a place in visualization. Okay, let's go on. Color scheme is intentional in line with brands. So what this means is, if you've got brand colors like I do for my dedicated academy, I have got orange, gray, and red, you can find the exact text values. Again, you go to colorpicker.com, or there are so many websites where you can do this. You can even do this in PowerPoint, where you can, select the color and look at the RGB values. But typically you can match the exact brand colors when you're asked. No more than 5 colors are used in the visualization. So this just means limit the number of colors in the visualization. If you're being intentional to begin with, you probably won't have this problem. If you're seeing yourself using, 6 or 7 different colors in the visual, you need to kind of step back and ask yourself, should this be more than 2 charts? Should this be maybe a whole different story, a whole different data visualization? Or maybe consider using a completely different chart, or filtering down your data to focus in on specific data points. Consistent color is used for same variables. You'll see this in the example that I'm getting to in about a minute, but it basically means if you're talking about an east and west region, and east is orange and west is blue, then in all your visualizations, just make sure that east and west remain the same color. So all the same variables should be the same color. And the reason for that is, when I see orange, I'll automatically think of that specific region, and I'll be able to follow the visualization a lot easier. Okay, Andrew's asking, what's your favorite visualization and why? Yeah, it would be great to hear from everyone what your favorite visualization is. I could tell you mine is probably a bar chart because I use them more frequently. I guess I look at differences in values across categories more than I look at anything else, but all charts are great charts. They all have a purpose, except the exploding 3D pie charts. They don't have a purpose except to confuse people. So at this point, I'm going to go to my example. Let me just scroll this down. Okay. So, oops, here's the example. Now this is this is the before image, okay? This is a terrible data visualization. So if you're just tuning in now, don't do this, right? This is not what I'm selling here. This is a chart that shows you price changes in consumer goods for the past, I think, 20 years or so. And it just shows you, have prices gone up in the past 20 years, percentage-wise, or have they gone down, right? Across all these different 13 categories. We've got TVs, toys, software, education, clothing, etc. There are a lot of issues. George just said, ow, my eyes. Yes, it actually hurt me physically to create this really terrible chart because it's got a lot of things going against it, right? I basically had to break almost all the rules, and I tried to break as many rules as possible in order to visualize this. So let's just start with the bad, right? Well, there's nothing really good here. The only good thing is the use of a bar chart, which I think is a good chart type for this data. So the title is too small. The subtitle, Adrian's asking, was it done in Power BI or something? I won't reveal the business intelligence software used in this visualization. But it could have been created in anything, right? My 4-year-old could have done this with a crayon, probably might have done a better job. But the title is too small, the subtitle is too big, not descriptive. We've got the word name and value here. It doesn't really add value or context to the conversation or to the visualization. We've got color legend, and we've also got the colors here with the title, so we don't really need a color legend. And to think of it, why do we even need 13 different colors, right? So probably get rid of the color legend. The grid lines are almost taking over the visual. The font type is a little bit hard to read. The numbers, these should be percentages because this is percentage price change. The bars could be ordered from greatest to smallest, right? So we can easily spot the differences, the big differences that went up in price and the categories that went down in price. The use of green and this really large axis here just doesn't make any sense. And we've got borders around each of the bars, which are red. Again, doesn't make any sense. So enough with the pain. The x-axis is almost as bad as Comic Sans. Yes, I tried to pick a really bad one. I don't mind Comic Sans. I think it looks kind of cool. I know people hate it. I don't know why they hate it. I think it's good. I'm pretty sure I used it for the data literacy for kids book title because it was for kids. All right, so, and now we're gonna go to the after chart, right? This is the exact same data. This is the exact same chart type and exact same message, but you can see the difference, hopefully, right? The title is bigger, the subtitle gives us a bit more information. We're using color in the kind of annotation where it says consumer product service categories that increased in price by over 50%, and it's in orange, right? And you'll see there are 3 bars here in orange and the titles are in orange. And these are all the categories that increased in price by over 50%. And then it says, and decreased in price by over 50%, and that's in blue. And we've got TVs here in blue. And we've got a data source on the bottom. We've got the titles here. So I think it's about reducing all the clutter, right? Let's just do a before and after one more time, just to show you the difference. Because I think with this visual, you're not going to spend as much time trying to understand what you're looking at. And in these visual best practices that I typically try to teach anybody I meet, that they should be using these visual best practices as much as possible to make their visualizations more effective. So at this point, that is my last slide, and I wanted to see if there are any comments, questions that are coming in from the audience. I'm definitely happy to address that, or I'm also happy to talk a bit more about the use of social media and how you can actually get some training and practice in data visualization. So let's see. Andrew, have you noticed any changing trends in the market over the last 12 months? More cognitive AI, ML analytics? Yes, I've actually seen Qlik. Qlik has this thing, I think it's called Insight Bot, or it might have been changed to another name. Maybe Julie can let us know if that name changed. I heard somebody say that, I think yesterday, the day before, but they've got this really cool thing where you can actually ask a question from your data and say something like, what were sales trends last year? So there's some NLP being built into that. And I think in some cases, some data viz software has actually gotten better at producing something that looks closer to what we're looking at here. And also even giving you some insights, like some text that would just populate by itself, annotations. Let's see, Julie says, I've been at Qlik for 12 years and still have trouble keeping up with the product names. Well, Julie, I mean, if you knew it today, it might have changed tomorrow. So I guess let's just go with Insight Bot. That's what I heard when I attended a presentation from Qlik. But those are some of the trends. You know, it's actually interesting. We're talking about trends. The one thing I forgot to say about this visual here is this is actual data from 1997 to 2017. And I just wanted to tell you, I think it's a bit sad that our cost of TVs have gone down, software, toys, clothes, but things like college tuition, education, childcare, medical care have really gone up. I kind of wish it was the other way around, so then we can have more education and better childcare. Let's see, Jeff says, Qlik has a feature called Insights, and you type the measure you want to analyze, and it suggests different visuals and dimensions to look at. Yeah, I'm not sure if that's the same thing. The Insight Bot that I'm talking about was like natural language processing. I'm not sure if you can actually talk to it yet, or you just have to write a message, but that is a trend that I've been seeing. But one thing I wanted to tell people is if you wanted to practice your data visualizations, you can actually go to something called makeovermonday.co.uk, where they have, and I'll stop sharing, they have sample data sets that you can work with every single week. I think they did this for probably 5 or 6 years now. Every Monday they post a new data set. It's a team of these 2 great individuals that have been working on this for every week for 5-6 years now. And they post a visual from, let's say, a newspaper or a magazine or some kind of social media post. And they give you the underlying data, and you can basically remake that visualization. So it's a makeover, right, by using that same data. And you can use any data viz software to do this. And then you post it on Twitter, on LinkedIn with the hashtag MakeoverMonday. And you can basically see a flood of ideas of other people trying to make over this visual in a better way. They typically change the entire chart type. They change the colors. They try to make it more interesting. This is where you'll see some of the data viz art come through, which is really those complex charts that probably don't even have a name, or they have some name that somebody somewhere developed. But definitely a great place to practice that. Let's see, Adrian, do you not think that one graph on its own shows a picture, whereas more than one with correlation shows a story? I think it depends on the visual, Adrian. I think it's sometimes you can tell a whole story from just a number in a sentence, and sometimes you can have five different charts that help support that, key message in that story. All right, let's see. Andrew, how am I doing on time?
Oh, good, I think, yeah. Good. 5 minutes, Brian, is time left?
About 5 minutes, Kate. Yep. So, Kate, one of the things that I wanted to ask you about is that quite often I see a mixture of granularities when dealing with visualization, and quite often it's fed down by like design teams who have designed a screen that has a lot of charts on it, but they don't really take into account to what Adrian said, that the correlation, but also the granularity of the data that you're dealing with. So sometimes you'll be put in a situation where you have to show a trend that's looking with 12 months worth of data, and you'll have another chart on the same screen that's looking at the very granular part of that data at the same time. So do you kind of have any tips to kind of guide users through that experience and how to kind of chunk those charts up and make them a bit more relevant to the kind of level of data that they need to be looking at?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great use case of data visualization with either hovering with tooltips or drill downs to create additional charts. And I definitely dealt with this in the past where, some users want a lower granularity of data and others just want to see a rolled up view. And, two ways to address this. One is first start with data, the underlying data that has to be as granular as you can get, right? Make sure that is the data you're using. And then you can roll that up. So let's say if, one user cares about the monthly trend over 12 months and the other wants to drill down to the date level, you've got to make sure that you have the date level raw data underlying, and then you create a visual, let's say, a line chart that has a monthly view with the ability to, when you see a dip or a really great increase, the ability to actually click on that data point and either on hover, see another data visualization that gives you the underlying data, or sometimes, I've developed things where you can click on that specific month and then see a daily, either another line graph or a daily table that shows you the underlying data to give them the power to really drill down. So that's a very popular use case that I've seen.
It's a very good answer. Thank you very much.
Just checking to see if there are more questions coming in.
Mine was just around the nature of the global audience that's listening in here, but obviously using your data-cated program.
Data-cated, Andrew.
I can't say that word. Just in general, there's obviously cultural differences. People have different backgrounds socially and culturally and corporate environments. Does that differ? Does that introduce complexity into dashboard design and visualizations? Do you actually have to think about who the audience is and where are they located in the world?
Yes, absolutely. I think there was a poll or some kind of survey done, and I remember Alberto Cairo talking about this. If somebody wants, I can help pull that up. But there was actually a survey done of different countries and the chart types that they prefer using, and in some cases, some countries definitely used these 5 charts, and other countries used those 5 charts, and a lot of times they didn't overlap, which was interesting. But aside from the charts that people are used to seeing, and those are the charts you typically should be using, are the ones that your audience is more familiar with because it takes them, less time to teach them how to actually read a chart. Color also plays a big part in these cultural differences because, we spoke about red as potentially being something bad in the Western culture, whereas, in China, it might be perceived as a good thing. So marking something in red could be confusing if you're trying to mean it to be a bad thing when it actually is interpreted as a good thing in China. So Adrian says, in Yorkshire, we like brown and boring. So, all right, that's good to know. In Scotland, are you guys not more about the orange and robust bar charts? I don't know. Who's from Scotland here?
I don't think Adrian is.
Yeah, I think Adrian is. I think we've got a phrase in Scotland called "yanking your chain." I think he's doing that quite significantly throughout this presentation. But we're not going to rise to it, are we, boys? We're going to stay on the level, and yeah.
No, it's a valid comment, especially about the use of colours, because we tend not to think about who's actually going to be looking at the application and what difference the colours make to different people.
Yeah.
A question around designing for mobile platforms, because I think almost every week I see a new visual in a mobile app. So the most recent ones I'm looking at are health apps that have got designs, usually pie charts or little sort of percentage, the pie chart with the percentage in the middle. Some of them are done well, some of them are not done well. Some of them use quite garish colors. Have you got any top tips for how you would go about designing something for small form factors?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're working with, mobile dashboards, you have to keep in mind that your user, has to actually see the numbers, right? So you definitely have to be a lot more selective with the KPIs, key performance indicators that you're portraying, and that the font size of those are large enough. A lot of times you have to ask yourself, what do people actually care about? because you find some of these apps give you data just because they have that data, but you can't really act on it. A lot of it is historical, and you're like, okay, great. I, did 60,000 steps last month. I don't know. I don't count my steps, but I know a lot of people that do. I don't know if 60,000 is crazy or not enough. But basically, you have to think about the so what in any dashboard. But I think for mobile dashboard especially, you have to really think in the mind of your audience. What exactly do they care about, and what's the simplest way you could show it to them? Those charts that you just mentioned, George, the pie chart with a % in the middle. I'm assuming you're maybe thinking of a donut chart which is the same as a pie chart with a circle in the middle. Yes, those could be good unless you have more than 4 or 5 slices or parts of a donut. I guess they're still called slices, because at that point, if you have too many things going on, you're starting to lose sense of what actually is important. I think where we're going to be in the future is you're going to be able to see your chart, your donut chart, for example, with some sort of insight that says, this is 10% higher than last week. And, again, these apps have to predict what it is you care about. Do you want to be 10% higher than last week? If yes, they'll give you a little star or a little happy face emoji for, those who've asked about emojis. But I think definitely keeping the audience in mind in that sense.
Thanks, Kate. That was really useful.
Yeah, I think that's a great point to finish on, the kind of the gamification of visualization. It's a thing that you're starting to see more prevalent, and I actually want to agree with you, Kate, on defending the bar chart, because quite often when a raft of alternatives are included, they're included because people want them to look different, and it's not necessarily to fit the best. And the best way to show a lot of data is with a bar chart. When you try and jam it into a tree map or a pie chart, or even a spinning pie chart, which is the most incredible type of pie chart, it doesn't quite fit as well as a bar chart. So I think I'm with you on the bar chart front. I think that's the way that a lot of visualization should go. If you don't like it, tilt it on its side and make it a vertical rather than a horizontal.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm going to ignore Adrian's comment here about orange bar charts. But yeah, simple, I think simple is better. If there's a simple way to do it, do it.
That's a great summary. great summary for the end. Keep it simple.
Yeah, I think we're going to release Kate if there's no more questions from the audience. I think she's done a sterling job fighting her way through those questions. And Kate, it's invaluable to have someone with your experience and breadth of knowledge on the episode as well. So thank you so much for coming and giving us your views on the current state of play with visualization. It's been a very good experience. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Kate.
Bye.
See you. So I'm going to take back my screen just for a brief second. So that was super cool from Kate. She did an admirable job of getting through the Q&A there. And I think as BI professionals, we need to remember what our roots are, and our roots are in visualization. Yes, they are in Qlik, but they are in visualization, and having those, I'd really recommend going and looking at some of Kate's content, because it really focuses on those visualization principles that sometimes we all just need a little bit of a reminder of when we're stuck in the deep water and out in the coal face. So thanks again for Kate, that was awesome. Okay, so we'll just continue the awesome. So as our second speaker, we've got Qlik, who's well, she's been at Qlik for a long time, and we were desperately hoping to kind of hook up with Julie and meet her at COP26 in Glasgow, and then COVID happened, and it is still happening. So we've got the next best thing. We've got Julie on your screens here at QVMS episode 11. So as the executive director of Qlik.org and a long time involvement in CSR at Qlik, it's a pleasure to hand over to you, Julie, to kind of give us your latest views on what are happening in those areas. So thank you so much for coming along.
Thank you, Brian. I'm so excited to be here. I have a similar feeling to like returning home, if you will, to a large family gathering at the holidays, right? You know so many of you and have worked with you over the years. Luminaries and partners and clients alike have been so supportive of the corporate responsibility platform. We couldn't have done it without you, and just want to thank everyone that's on this call today who's supported us. And I have a couple of asks, some exciting asks, I think, to become even more involved from here through the time frame of COP26 in Glasgow. And I completely agree with you with regards to Kate's content. You know, I have the kind of the privilege of working with new organizations that are new to data analytics, new to visualization tools, new to even kind of being able to leverage the data that they've been collecting for years and years. And the main struggle, right? We oftentimes get to the point where we build a nice data model. We can build a kind of functional dashboard, if you will, but taking it to that next level where it's really like something that people want to sign into and use and get the information that they're looking for is a big struggle for a lot of organizations, myself included, right? That's the most difficult part for me. So that information that Kate's putting out into the universe and that I know a lot of you actually focus on as well is so valuable to organizations, both organizations that are far along the data continuum, data visualization spectrum, to those that are just starting out. So I'm planning to kind of send some links around, if you will, to some of the organizations that I have the privilege of working with as well. So yeah, thank you again. You know, we are here all in lockdown mode. Want to thank obviously those of you who've taken part in corporate responsibility hackathons, datathons over the past number of years, participated in an incredible amount and library of work around COVID, which you know, was a lot out there on Qlik community. We put a page up, obviously. We created resources for customers, partners, NGOs to access, and it's just it's a body of work that I can speak for everyone at Qlik, from our board, Tama Bravo, all the way down, that we're all incredibly proud of. And so we definitely view that as a team effort and want to thank everyone who participated in that over the past number of months. It's been instrumental, and you'll see, you know, we'll talk about here in a minute about how that's actually going to fuel some work now into 2021 on the global health side. So I'll dive right in. As Brian mentioned, I've been at Qlik 12 years. I started in sales and pre-sales. That's where my technical experience comes from. And, but have had the honor of heading up our corporate responsibility area now for 8 years. And with the launch of Qlik.org back in 2019, we are hitting the electric gas pedal. So if you haven't heard about stories, or, you know, I get asked sometimes like, oh, do you still work with the UN? And I'm like, kind of like, wow, yeah, we're the analytic standard across the UN. So in any event, we need to do a better job of getting this information out. Because there's a lot of opportunities for other organizations, partners, customers alike to get involved in this work and feel inspired about taking some of these ideas and actually running with them within your own companies and with your customers and the work that you're doing as well. So in a nutshell, my job at Qlik is to lead our efforts to improve society, right? We make great software. We're a great company. We have a great ecosystem of partners and customers alike. And what we want to do is we want to leverage all of that for good, not only help our clients actually improve their business metrics, but also kind of create in a world whereby business is actually also improving society. And that's really what we've been focused on for a great number of years, and what we're going to continue to focus on for years to come. So everything we do at Qlik is focused on the 2030 agenda. As I mentioned, we're the analytical standard across the UN Secretariat. That doesn't mean they have a few pockets of Power BI and Tableau here and there. That's absolutely true. Every organization has multiple tools. But by and large, the kind of system that reports HR data, financial data, all the way up to the controller, as well as now a very impactful project that will launch in the next month to report the progress towards the SDGs, are all built on Qlik. We have a team of folks at the UN that have and deploy several Qlik servers. And those are used for public applications, as well as internal applications, as well as highly confidential applications within human rights areas and peacekeeping efforts. So that's kind of from our standpoint, that's what we're all working towards. And the more that we can get on board with achieving the SDGs, the more that we'll have a chance at success at reaching them, right? And as everybody on this call knows, you can't manage what you can't measure. And that's exactly what our business is all about. So for those that aren't aware, we have kind of a program, if you will, that really has three main areas. One, engagement. How do we involve employees at Qlik, folks within our partner ecosystem, folks within our customers, the charities that we donate our software to? How do we all kind of collaborate together, if you will, to, again, make the world a better place, which was my job title when I started 8 years ago, you know, through the use of data and empowering, you know, these organizations with information. And there's all different types of ways to do that, whether it be kind of, you know, volunteering your time at a food bank to pack shelves, to kind of helping that food bank leverage a Qlik license so that they can manage their inventory much more effectively using analytics, right? Different types of engagement. Obviously, the hackathons fall into this category. And really, we want to build this kind of collective ecosystem, if you will, that is leveraging our main assets, which are our people, our knowledge, and how do we use that for good. The second is our software program. And here's kind of a big change that's coming. We've donated software licenses over the past 10 years. This is our 10-year anniversary, to over 450 nonprofits. Those nonprofits around the world serve many different missions, whether it be humanitarian and natural disaster relief, to Mother's Choice in Hong Kong that provides, you know, adoption and counseling services for young women who are in crisis pregnancy situations, to, you know, obviously a number of organizations that are working on the grounds in, you know, very vulnerable areas to climate, COVID, and obviously other kind of environmental concerns. So we're very proud of that program. And for the past 10 years, that program has been really kind of focused on providing those licenses, a perpetual license to these nonprofits. Some are using QlikView still, some are using QlikSense. Some more recently, obviously, have adopted a cloud strategy. But needless to say, we are going to be undertaking an effort here in 2021 to actually move them all to the Qlik SaaS environment. And this is kind of my first ask. We're going to need some help to do that. We view moving these organizations to our SaaS platform, whether it be QlikSense Business, Enterprise SaaS, or Client Managed, as a true value add to these organizations. They'll be able to minimize their cost and on hardware and maintaining their own servers, as well as they're going to get all the latest and greatest stuff that Qlik is coming out as its strategic direction to move to SaaS. So my first ask is, you know, we're going to continue our software program. We're going to continue to support nonprofits. We'd like to get as many partners and customers and people knowledgeable about the Qlik kind of environment, if you will, to help these organizations migrate to a cloud and SaaS-based platform. So that's my first task. We're going to continue with this program, but we are going to actually take a direction where we're going to want everybody to move to SaaS. And then finally, this is what I'm going to speak on mostly today, because this actually touches home right in Glasgow, Scotland, which I'm so excited about. And that's our Global Sustainability Framework. That's the effort in which we're partnered with the UN to actually create a series of applications for customers, partners, to actually manage their environmental impact along with other metrics to form an entire ESG portfolio of apps, you know, so that they can measure obviously their impact upon not only the environment, but obviously social and governance factors as well. And with the COP26 taking place in Glasgow, Scotland, I was very much looking forward to being there in November. Now we have about 13 months to get ready for COP26 in November of 2021. And I'd love for you all to be there, right there with us, as we will sponsor again that event taking place next year, just as we did the past COP in Madrid. So what does that framework look like? So about a year and a half ago, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, right? So we all know the UN work, but the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, they're the creators of all the methodologies by which organizations calculate and measure their CO2 emissions. They're also obviously very instrumental in kind of the accords of the Paris Agreement, right? So when we hear about Paris Agreement, we hear about we've got to reduce CO2 and GHG emissions and all of that. That science and direction is coming from the UNFCCC. They're based out of Bonn, Germany, and back in 2018, early 2019, they became a customer of Qlik. So they use Qlik internally for applications, dashboarding, all of that, as well as a partner. Because what they wanted to do is take their very scientific, very kind of lengthy documents, if you will, that describe the methodologies of how do you calculate your CO2 emissions when it comes to air travel. How, for those of you that participated in our last hackathon, or the hackathon in 2019, how do you measure your CO2 emissions when it comes to transportation or your supply chain, or your electricity utilization or consumption within your real estate or within your offices, within your events, right? The UNFCCC is the organization at the very top of the food chain that creates the methodologies to actually help organizations calculate their carbon footprint. Well, these are really lengthy, scientific, long, no one reads them documents. They're very difficult to understand. But quite honestly, between us, they're just really kind of models. They're models of data. They're emissions factor tables. They can be actually accomplished for an organization in an app, in a Qlik app. And we have examples of how we've done that. The UN air travel dashboard a couple of years ago that we worked on during the hackathon as being one example, but we have several other examples. So our partnership with the UNFCCC is actually to create more and more of these apps, we're calling them calculators, to roll out into Qlik applications, into all of our customers, all of our clients, so that they can actually measure, monitor, and reduce their CO2 emissions, not in a one-off scenario, but in their traditionally kind of decision-making process app that they use Qlik for and other BI tools for every day, right? So the goal, like for this UN hackathon that took place in 2019, it was not to create a carbon calculator for the UN Secretariat, which actually drives about 80% of the carbon emissions. The goal was to create a way in which that calculation could find its way into a travel management dashboard that the UN uses every day. So if they're looking at booking a flight, they're looking at scheduling a meeting, and they want to obviously make good decisions about location, cost, all of that kind of good stuff, we want to embed the environmental impact of where and how they host that meeting or book that flight right into that point of decision. And that's what we do. That's what we do for our customers every day, right? Our apps drive decisions. So let's bring environmental factors into these decision-making apps so that it's not a rear view mirror. It's not just a report that a company creates and puts on a shelf and checks off the box that they, calculated their carbon footprint and published it. We want that data to actually become part of the natural, normal, everyday decision-making process. And we believe that Qlik, and the UNFCCC does as well, Qlik has a unique opportunity to do that because of where we sit in this ecosystem. So this framework is basically taking this kind of whole conglomeration of partners, the UN, the UNFCCC, C40 cities, Exponential Roadmap, as well as NGOs that are doing this, Conservation International, WRI, and others, the expertise of these organizations, along with customers and partners like yourselves, to actually help us drive this methodology forward. And here's kind of really how it works, right? So there's sustainability data everywhere. We already have it. We have our electricity consumption figures in our ERP systems. We have our air travel kind of records, if you will, already in American Express global travel, or whatever we decide to use of how we book our air travel. We have the data. Now it's just a matter of bringing the environmental impact of that data into making those decisions. It's not a separate system. It's not a separate silo. It's not a separate technology that a company has to buy. It's just a freeing of this data into the decision-making process that they do every day. So how will that work, right? So right now, everything exists in silos. You have, we're partnered with IKEA right now in a really powerful app, and I can't wait to show it off, here in the next probably about 6 weeks. We'll be ready to show that thing off. They calculate the environmental impact of their entire supply chain. They currently do that in Excel, and they do that within their sustainability department at IKEA. And we all know IKEA is a brand that is focused on not only being sustainable for itself, but driving sustainability forward for the entire private sector. So we're taking that collection of Excel models and simulation tools and all of this kind of really powerful, very scientific, very data science driven stuff and actually building it into a Qlik app, right? And it's not that far off than some of the work that you've probably done, those consultants on the call, with your clients who have like a budgeting system in Excel, a reporting system Excel that's downloading data from everywhere, cobbling together a bunch of VLOOKUP tables and then creating reports, right? It's not that different, but we're creating that environment in Excel, and that's going to be a calculator, right? But many organizations are doing really great things about calculating their environmental impact from their travel, from their supply chain, from their real estate, right? But it's all in silos right now. And quite honestly, everybody's doing it manually. They're doing it in Excel. I met with a very large automobile manufacturer that's measuring the carbon footprint of its entire transportation of parts amongst its warehouses and its factories throughout Europe, a very, very large automobile manufacturer, in Excel. But that, if you think about it, that data is already in their ERP. And if we were to actually create the right kind of calculator for them, an app, if you will, in Qlik, they could pull automatically the data out of their ERP and make better decisions real time with geospatial analytics. And, heck, they could do with it alerting and forecasting and all of that once they have that app in Qlik, right? So that's what we're focused on. Right now, it's all kind of inconsistent and it's scattered throughout different organizations. But what we're trying to create is a framework, a series of apps that many organizations can use and plug right into what they're doing today. Then, by the way, we're going to gather this data, right? Because the goal is to measure our progress towards the SDGs. What are companies doing? We want this kind of collaborative effort, if you will, of sharing data, sharing best practices, just kind of like the IKEA and the UN example. They're willing to share how they're doing it, right? With a demo and publicize it so that other companies can do the same thing and they don't have to recreate the wheel. They can do that when we get all of these apps built into Qlik. It's just a simple demo that we could download from qlik.org, for example. And then finally, measure and monitor global progress. Are we going to reach the agreement set in Paris a few years back, right? Where are we? And where do we need to double down on efforts? Where do we need to invest in innovation? Where do we need to actually help organizations move more quickly? So there are a lot of partners, and this is what we presented on stage, actually introduced on stage at COP25 in Madrid. We had a few examples, which I'm going to walk through a couple of them now very quickly, but we want to build more. We want to build more with customers, more with partners, and actually kind of create a whole library of assets that will have the full backing of the UNFCCC's marketing behind it, as well as Qlik, to actually take these out to tens of thousands of companies, if not hundreds of thousands of companies, very, very quickly, because we need to act quickly. So as examples, many people on this call are very much aware of what we did with the UN Secretariat, right? That is up and running at the UN, and they couldn't be more pleased. Back in 2019, we had a hackathon. Let's look at the air travel emissions from the United Nations Secretariat. 80% of their carbon emissions actually come from air travel. So let's clean up their records. That was the first step that was built, right? Cleaning up the data, and then build nice visualizations for them so they could see where the greatest environmental impact from their air travel was coming from what department, how can they reduce it, right? Let's make suggestions to them on where they host meetings, whether they rebook a class fare from, you know, first class to coach class, how much that would save, right? So on and so forth. Happy to say a lot of the work that people put in to participate in that hackathon is up and running at the UN, and we're actually going through all of their 2019 records right now, and they're now in a standpoint where they're using this every day within their travel department as they look forward to, once we travel again, you know, booking new meetings when we're able to do that. Another example is a partner in Deloitte, and we presented this on stage at COP as well. So Deloitte Belgium has a goal to reduce their CO2 by 25% by 2021. And one of the areas they're focused on doing that is in mobility, right? Their offices coming into, their employees coming into their office, and how are they doing that? So they're supporting a lot of their employees with either electronic vehicles, passes to park at the train station, free cards to actually bike into the office, things like that. But they built this really sophisticated smartphone app that the employees of Deloitte Belgium are using. And then they take all of that data and they measure it actually in a Qlik dashboard. And the really cool thing about this app, right, is actually they're finding that there is no cost to going green. It's only upside. They've reduced their expenses on employee mobility by going green. So not only are they having a positive impact on their carbon footprint, a positive impact on the environment, they are actually reducing expenses as well. So it's a really powerful story. And that's just, again, another example of this power of this, like, giving choices that are greener and then measuring the impact, right? And helping, using analytics to get us to where we need to be much more quickly. C40 Cities, many of you know kind of our partnership with C40 Cities, one that we're very, very proud of. C40 Cities has the 96 largest cities in the world, all focused and collaborating in Qlik on kind of the reduction of CO2 emissions within their cities. These are applications that are primed and ready. A couple of years ago, we had the Boston carbon emissions, right? Well, that's being used by the city of Boston. So thank you for anyone who participated in the hackathon in 2018 with C40 Cities in the city of Boston. But we need the help, right? There are probably 20 other cities that would love to have the same application as the city of Boston. So if anyone's interested in taking those assets that we designed and delivered to the city of Boston to reduce their CO2 emissions and helping your city get involved, and as part of the C40 Cities network, we could make that introduction. But there's a lot of powerful stuff there happening within global cities. Obviously, it's intersecting right now with COVID and kind of the global health, you know, how do we take care of our vulnerable populations within cities, right? There's an intersection of that data happening right now. But even the C40 Cities group would love to actually have assistance from, you know, those that are knowledgeable in data and metrics and all of that to help them roll out more and more of these kinds of applications, not only for C40, but obviously their network of cities. And then finally, I have the privilege of speaking at the Sustainable Packaging Conference next week, actually, September 29th. I'm speaking on sustainable packaging. We all know we want to reduce plastic. We need to protect our oceans. We need to switch to more sustainable practices within every company's supply chain. Well, there are a lot of companies that are doing good things. I, for one, didn't know that McDonald's here in the United States actually only purchases paper products from sustainable forests, right? What's a sustainable forest? Well, it's a forest, obviously, that is planting more trees than it's actually extracting, right? Well, that's what Forest in Focus does. They take several layers of data and they layer the data of kind of geospatial data with regards to kind of land use and forest kind of metrics, right? The counts, if you will, of extractions versus mortality versus of trees versus kind of replantings. And then they can go back to actually a company like a McDonald's, like a Staples, like an IKEA, who's one of their partners, to tell them buy from these mills because these mills are actually practicing good practices when it comes to sustainable forestry. We're going to need paper products, but there's a very positive way to do that to obviously replenish the paper that we're extracting from the lands. And they're doing and measuring all of that in the Qlik app. It's super powerful. And this application right now is US based, but it could very easily be adapted and adopted by any other country as well. It's just a layering of data, as we all know, right? So here's my second ask. COP26. We were very proud partners and sponsors of COP25 in Madrid. We announced all of these apps. We had great partners on stage with us talking about how they use data, how they use information built in Qlik to further their sustainability mission. Now, what I just talked about with this framework, right? We have a number of apps in play. We're building a number of them. We'd love to actually showcase more. I can't wait to be in Glasgow in November. I hope to meet Mabel and Olive when I do so. But in any event, for those of you who've seen the Andrew Cotter book of Olive and Mabel during quarantine, but in any event, you know, it'd be great to have more and more examples, more and more partners involved. There's just so much kind of opportunity for us to actually get out and drive an impact, as well as create some really powerful applications that are needed by our customers and partners. So, you know, just reach out to me. Would love to, you know, have, you know, folks actually join in on this. There's plenty of work to go around, but really it's all about focused, you know, a focused approach on how can we create better applications, better use cases of data so that clients and partners, NGOs, as well as, you know, government agencies can make better decisions for a more sustainable future. And I apologize, I am not as well practiced as Kate to be able to kind of juggle the questions alongside. I wanted to kind of get all of that content out, but happy to talk through any of this in more detail at a later meeting, and of course, answer any questions that you all might have. But, you know, would love to share some passes to COP26 on stage.
Thanks, Julie. That was great. We've got a few questions. George, do you want me to pick up the first one?
Yeah, dive in, Andrew.
Yeah. So Scott Motion's on as well. He's one of the fellow Scottish luminaries here. He asked a question about the CSR, and that many organisations is obviously taking place and is gaining more importance in a lot of corporate environments. Can you give us some your thoughts on why that is the case? Why is it gaining more importance? And also, in the context of Qlik, what motivates Qlik as an organisation to participate in this field? Is it just commercial, or do you guys morally think this is something that you must be doing?
Yeah, it definitely started with kind of a testament, if you will, to the Qlik culture you know, truly 8 years ago, I was, you know, kind of put in a role of saying, you know, we have this amazing software, we have amazing people, let's go out and actually touch 1 billion lives, was the old kind of mantra, if you will. And how do we do that? Let's donate our software and help nonprofits actually improve their mission through data and the power of analytics. So it's not a business kind of thing for us, although now in recent years, we have seen more and more businesses pay attention. A lot of companies have great CSR platforms. They put a lot of money. Google, I think, donates $250 million a year, right? So in all different causes. So this is important to organizations now. And it's becoming kind of more and more standard procedure, whether it be because it's regulated like it is in France to calculate and reduce your carbon footprint, to, you know, now we have the sustainable development goals and all of this ESG reporting that is required by financial institutions. A big, you know, bank here in the United States called BlackRock, the largest hedge fund in the world. It has an ESG portfolio. They demand that their investments actually be taking care of all 3 factors: environmental, social, and governance. And so it's just becoming more and more standard practice, not only the kind of the good and nice to have any longer, but it's becoming the way that companies and organizations recognize that they have to do business. And in order to do that, they need powerful data and analytics to actually help them measure and be very transparent about their progress. So it's not a nice to have anymore, it's a need to have.
Yeah, that's good. That's positive. Yeah. There's a good question from Adrian as well, actually ties in with the question that I posted there a bit. Where do people get this data from? He's interested in exploring this data. And my question was similar. How do people get involved with this? You asked for volunteers in terms of customers and partners. What's the process to actually engage with you?
Yeah, no, so reach out to me on email. I'm at julie.k@qlik.com, JWE, or qlik.org, you can find us. A lot of the work is out there. We're kind of revamping qlik.org right now, launching a new version actually probably around the end of November with a lot more material on the sustainability framework. It's kind of been a work in progress. Obviously you got to build the app, very much focused on not just talking the talk, but walking the walk. So some of these apps we're building for internal purpose at Qlik, right? Because I own our sustainability carbon footprint practices at Qlik. So we're kind of taking that and then we want to roll that out as demos to our customers. So pre-end of November, feel free to email me. Love to get you involved with a project that's either local to yourself or something that you're interested in or working with a particular customer, what have you, give you examples, give you kind of demos of what's happening at maybe other companies. But then after November, we'll have kind of a new website, if you will, that talks a little bit more, shares a little bit more of these demos so you can download them and make them applicable for your engagements as well.
That's great. I guess the key thing in Adrian's question is that access to data. Everybody wants to consume the data and analyze it. It'd be great if there's resources in terms of where can people go to obtain this environmental data to explore it. Yep.
So some of that, that's a part of the silo problem. There's a lot of public information out there, like the air travel carbon emissions, for example. That data best comes from a calculator that the UN provides. So if you want to calculate your carbon emissions on a flight, the UN actually has a calculator for that. That's publicly available. If you want to create your real estate, carbon footprint like we do here at Qlik, right? That's the biggest component of ours. That's a whole nother kind of set of emissions factors that you have to download and access a variety of different sites. It's very siloed right now.
Yeah.
But we have a lot of knowledge about what are the right sources for that. And, as anyone that knows Qlik, that's just a data source. Never met a data source you don't like, right? So that's just a kind of a pull for us as long as we know where to get it. And that then we combine with your internal kind of data, if you will, to help organizations kind of measure their CO2. So I can help you get there. But that's, as an example, one of the resources that we plan to put on the new version of qlik.org.
Okay, great stuff. And I take it on LinkedIn, you'll be, when you go live with the new setup, you'll be doing a lot of marketing to make this publicly aware. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. And lots of positive feedback in presentation as well.
Oh, great. Yeah. Love
lots
it.
of interest, I'm sure.
Yeah, we'll have a big celebration in Glasgow in 2021.
Yeah.
We're running out of time, Julie, but just a really quick question from me. Hopefully it's not a really long answer. How do you actually structure the time, like the effort in consultancy time or actual bodies developing for the UN? How much time roughly are you giving them a year? Can you say that? Do you have people dedicated to actually working for them?
We did a couple of years ago, but interestingly enough, Qlik has actually been so successful at the UN Secretariat that they have a team of about 4 folks actually that maintain their Qlik environment for their own internal application uses. Now, when we partner with like a peacekeeping or like UNEP, the environmental group, or what have you, those are smaller projects that then we do have an opportunity for someone like yourself, George, to come in, help that help us build up that application. And then that's a, publicly accessible, example of your work and Qlik and all of that. So the big body of work is now kind of from the IT department, but at the UN, but there are always these other little projects that we love to support and would love to get, your guys's experience and knowledge in building.
Well, thanks, Julie.
Well, I think that's been great. I mean, and I love the discussions that we have at the end of our presenters' talks in QVMS. They seem to harvest so many great questions and so many open questions as well, which leads to further discussions. So we really value you being here, Julie. It's a major difference for us, and we're not biased at all by the fact that you're probably going to be here at this time next year. So we're really hoping that we can all meet in person at that point. And like I say, COP26 is a not only fantastic initiative, but it's essential as well in terms of what we're all trying to do moving forward. So thank you so much, Julie, for lending your time to us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'm serious about that. I mean, we had a kind of a small presence at COP25, a few presentations, but at COP26, we actually plan to have our own booth. And it'd be great to have a lot of partners in at various times showcasing different solutions of the power of data to obviously, have a sustainable impact upon, our global warming in the future.
Well, that sounds awesome. And I don't think you'll be short of offers from either side of the pond, to be honest with you. So thanks again, Julie. That was great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
So I'm just gonna take over again just for a few seconds at the end here, just to tie things up, because I know people have Fridays to get on with. So let's get that up and running. If my PowerPoint plays, of course. So this is the bit where we just kind of summarize what's happening at the end here with our next virtual meetup. And we've got a bit of news, and in that after some close discussion with my fellow co-captains, we've decided just to roll back the cadence of QVMS just by a week at a time at the moment. We do appreciate that people are starting to go back to pre-COVID work schedules, and not everyone's as free on a Friday as they were before. So we think that it's a good compromise at the moment. So we're going to roll back our schedule to every 3 weeks starting from our next session, but that's not to say that we don't have more great content for you going forwards as well. And of course we do have QVMS episode 12 planned already, and with the 3-week cadence, that will make our next meetup on the Friday the 16th of October. So you can mark that one in your diaries, or even better, sign up with the link that we'll show you again at the end here. And just to make up for the fact that we're going back to 3 weeks, we are going to give you 3 presenters for the price of 2 the next time around. So first up, we're going to have Rob O'Neill and Jenny Woods, who represent the NHS in the UK. And Rob has been diligently working on a command centre dashboard to kind of head up the NHS, and we're really delighted to be able to bring him along. Jenny Woods has been doing some sterling work on the BI side, NHST side, so we're bringing these guys along to sort of bring along the digital story of the health service in the UK and the way that they've used Qlik to kind of really move things forward from a BI perspective and an analytics perspective. So very excited to have those guys. And second of all, for those of you who are regular watchers, we actually had Josh Good turn up a couple of sessions ago. He had a very important family commitment, which we let him go for, but he was actually on the call for a few minutes, which was quite weird. But we are having Josh back to give him the session that he deserves as well. And if you've ever watched a Connections keynote, you'll be very familiar with Josh Good's top 5, top 10 type of section. So we're really excited to have this kind of double presentation for you next time around. And you can sign up for it at tiny.cc QVMS EP12. And thanks to Carolyn for getting that link together about 3 minutes before the show started. So I guess all that remains for us, you can let us know if you've got any thoughts on our shows that we do. QVMS Opinions is the place to kind of pop your opinions down. But apart from that, all that remains for me really is to kind of pass over to George and Andrew to say, I'm sure on my behalf as well, thanks for everyone being here and to our 2 presenters as well.
Yeah, I echo that. Thank you both, Kate and Julie. That's been fantastic. And to everybody that's been listening as well and watching, fantastic turnout as well. Thank you.
Yep, 100% agree. Yep. two great speakers and a great turnout. Obviously Friday afternoon, as it is here in the UK, Friday morning in the States, but it's great to see such engagement in this type of forum. We'll look forward to the next one as well.
Thanks very much, chaps. Great work again as usual. Thank you to everyone who's come along to the show. We really appreciate your repeat attendance. There's so many other things you could be doing on a Friday, but we appreciate you being here. So thank you so much. Have a great weekend, everyone, and we hope to see you on the 16th as well. Cheers.
I'll stop recording, Brian. Yeah.